Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Newsham, yokoso. Yeah, yeah. We could talk in Japanese for a few minutes, but that might take us further anyway. But glad to have you here. Welcome everyone here. I'll begin. I'm going to focus on China. Let's start, Mr. Mattis. Your question for you first is: has Chinese propaganda penetrated into the United States of America?
I think you can safely say that it has, but I think the point of my testimony was to point out that this is more than just narratives, that we should be concerned with the actions that result.
Right, I'm going to get into that, but I'm talking about just initially about propaganda. That's penetrated as well, right? I mean,
the messages certainly reach. So, yes.
Okay. And then I'll go to Colonel Newsham. My question for you is you mentioned in your written testimony hacking of U.S. military technology. Have we covered that today?
Not yet, sir. But a couple examples I used were the hacking of basically the plans for the C-17 transport, the F-35 fighter, and the Chinese have built a couple things that look an awful lot like those.
And do we have evidence that how they were able to hack that technology, to acquire that technology?
I believe there's a pretty good understanding of that. It was partly human access that allowed them to get the computer access, but also they have computer hackers on a scale you can hardly imagine. They've got plenty of resources to devote to it.
And then this will be for you, Colonel Newsham, and Mr. Mattis. Maybe this is what you wanted to get at too. In your written testimony, Colonel Newsham, you mentioned physical penetration or infiltration, and in particular, you point to what I would call South China Sea assets that China is trying to acquire in relationship to actually U.S. assets there, like the Northern Mariana Islands, et cetera. Can you want to take just a few seconds and expand on that, please?
Sure. Just regards to South China Sea, the Chinese had de facto control of that at least 7 or 8 years ago, long before Ukraine ever came along. They are now going after American territories and parts of America in Commonwealth of Northern Marianas and in Guam, coming through the borders. And in CNMI's case, it's with the approval of our own Department of Homeland Security, which gives visa-free access. Once they're in, they're causing all sorts of trouble. They've picked up Chinese around, wandering through the jungles around U.S. bases in Guam as well.
And that gets me to something that General Spalding wrote in his written testimony, where you said, and I'm going to quote it: "The relaxation of our security posture concerning active measures conducted by adversaries like China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran has left American institutions like those of its allies and entire international order vulnerable to relentless and ongoing political influence campaigns." Do you want to elaborate on that in connection with what we've been talking about with the physical infiltration, or the propaganda infiltration as well?
Well, one of the ways that that happens is because we relaxed COCOM. So COCOM prevented both us and our allies from trading with the Soviet Union, and through that trade, through that financial and economic relationship, is their biggest lever for political influence within the United States and its allies and the international system.
Thank you, General. And I would just say, before we go further, I did read one of your books, General Spalding, and actually one of Dr. Snyder's books on tyranny. So I have some familiarity. If you other two have written books, I haven't read those books yet. I'll try to track those down as well. And then I want to get back to you, Mr. Mattis. One of the things you were talking about, you wanted to talk more than the psychological or the infiltration or penetrations of psychology by China.
So, for example, in technology transfer, it's not simply computer network exploitation of companies or labs, but you see United Front organizations sort of building a I guess you could call it a fake community organization in the United States for Chinese and science and technology. And those organizations, or in some cases the organizations back in the PRC, have memorandums of understanding with U.S. professional organizations. And those associations basically work with the talent program to identify potential Americans that should be brought over to the PRC to contribute their knowledge and expertise. And I think we sometimes think of this too narrowly as a classified issue, or that we say that all science is published, when those soft skills of managing a lab, the experience of failed experiments, are all valuable pieces of knowledge and wisdom that are beneficial to running large labs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired, but I do have a couple of items I would like to submit for the record, and just say that 25 years ago, when I was working on graduate work in Northeast Asian security, China was a huge issue even then, for very different reasons, but they were emerging they had hegemonic ambitions at that time. And if you go back, you'll see that they had hegemonic ambitions literally forever in China. So I would submit a couple things for the record, Mr. Chairman. One of them is the testimony that was submitted to the United States Senate before the Emerging Threats and Spending Oversight Subcommittee on the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, entitled Strengthening International Cooperation to Stop the Flow of Fentanyl into the United States, of March 20th, 2024.
Without objection, so ordered.
And another piece, rather old, with a, I don't mean to, the title's offensive, but it was a book review of one of Mr. Snyder's books from September 9th, 2014, called Timothy Snyder's Lies by Daniel Lazar.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time